Before the fame, before the global recognition, before the action franchises that would eventually define his public identity, there was only a boy moving through the gray edges of London life. Jason Statham grew up in a world where opportunity was not offered but invented, often through necessity rather than choice. His surroundings were shaped by constant financial pressure, where every day required adaptation rather than planning. The idea of long-term dreams felt distant, almost irrelevant, when immediate survival demanded attention. Yet, even in this environment, something unusual was forming in him: a sense of discipline, an instinct for reading people, and a comfort with discomfort that most children never develop. Nothing about his early life suggested Hollywood. Instead, it resembled a training ground for resilience, where improvisation was more valuable than stability, and where the ability to keep moving forward mattered more than the direction itself. Growing up between struggle and survival, Jason's upbringing was shaped by constant instability, where money came and went unpredictably, and structure was something he had to create for himself. His family environment exposed him early to the realities of street-level survival, where negotiation, persuasion, and awareness were everyday tools. There was little separation between childhood and responsibility, and he often found himself observing adult behaviors far earlier than most. This accelerated exposure built a certain toughness in him, not just physical but psychological. While other children were guided toward structured futures, his path was defined by adaptability. He learned to interpret tone, body language, and intent in ways that would later become surprisingly useful in his career. Even without realizing it, he was developing the foundations of performance, not in a theatrical sense, but in the ability to present confidence in uncertain environments. It was not ambition yet, but it was preparation. The street corners that taught performance by his early teens. Jason was already spending time on the streets, working alongside his father in small-scale hustles that required both patience and charisma. He was not simply observing. He was participating, learning how attention could be gained and held in seconds. Selling imitation goods to strangers required more than speed. It required timing, confidence, and reading hesitation before it turned into refusal. He discovered that people respond more to energy than truth when uncertainty is involved. These early experiences became an informal education in human psychology. While it may have looked like simple street selling, it was actually training in persuasion and presence. Every interaction demanded quick thinking and adaptability. Although the work was harsh and far from ideal, it taught him how to operate under pressure without hesitation. These lessons, though unintentional, would later translate directly into his on-screen persona. Discipline forged through movement and water, amid the instability of his surroundings. Jason found structure in physical discipline. Martial arts became a refuge where repetition replaced chaos and effort, produced visible progress. Training demanded control, patience, and precision, offering him a rare environment where outcomes were predictable if effort was consistent. Around the same time, he discovered diving, a sport that required complete focus and fear management. In diving, hesitation could not exist. Every movement had to be intentional and calculated. The combination of martial arts and diving created a foundation of physical awareness that would later distinguish him in action cinema. More importantly, both disciplines introduced him to the concept of mastery through repetition. He was not naturally privileged with resources or comfort, but he developed control over his body and mindset. These skills gave him a sense of direction, even when his broader future remained unclear. A diving career built on precision and near success, Jason's commitment to diving led him into competitive sport at a national level, where he trained with intensity and consistency for years. He represented England and competed internationally, including appearances at major competitions where the margins between success and failure were extremely narrow. Diving demanded perfection, and even small deviations could separate finalists from those who narrowly missed recognition. Jason often found himself close to break, through moments but not quite crossing into elite status. The experience of finishing outside top positions repeatedly created both frustration and motivation. He had the discipline of an athlete, but not the results that typically define long-term sporting careers. Over time, it became clear that while he was highly skilled, the path to Olympic success was narrowing. These experiences, however, shaped his mental resilience. He learned how to continue performing even when outcomes did not match effort. Leaving sport behind without losing its lessons when his competitive diving career began to plateau, Jason faced a transition that many athletes struggle with, redefining identity after years of singular focus. Returning to ordinary life was not simple, especially after experiencing the intensity of structured sport. He briefly returned to informal street trading, not out of ambition but familiarity. It was an environment he understood, even if he did not necessarily belong there anymore. Yet the discipline he had developed in diving did not disappear. Instead, it became embedded in how he approached everything else. During this period, his physical appearance and athletic build began attracting attention outside of sport. What once had been purely functional training started to become visually marketable. Without actively seeking it, he was entering a space where image and presence could create opportunities. This transition period, though uncertain, set the stage for an unexpected shift toward modeling. Discovery through modeling and unexpected exposure, Jason's entry into modeling was not planned but emerged through recognition of his physical presence and natural composure. Agencies noticed his athletic build, strong posture, and the confidence he carried from years of competitive sport and street experience. Unlike traditional models, he did not present a manufactured image. His appeal came from authenticity and physical realism. Campaigns soon followed, and he began working with commercial brands that valued his rugged, grounded appearance. Despite this new visibility, he maintained aspects of his previous life, creating an unusual dual existence between emerging fame and everyday survival habits. Modeling provided financial stability for the first time, but it did not immediately redefine his identity. Instead, it functioned as a bridge into a world he had never imagined entering. Through this exposure, he eventually came into contact with individuals connected to the film industry, setting the stage for a much larger transformation. The Guy Ritchie breakthrough and cinematic entry. Jason's transition into acting began when filmmaker Guy Ritchie noticed him during a modeling-related interaction and saw potential in his natural street authenticity. Unlike traditional auditions, Jason was not asked to perform in a scripted way. Instead, he was placed in a situation that mirrored his real life experience, convincing someone to buy a product using persuasion alone. He approached it not as acting but as instinct, drawing directly from his past. This authenticity impressed Ritchie, who cast him in a major role in a crime film that focused on London's underground world. The performance required no adaptation for Jason. It was an extension of who he had been. The film became a commercial success and introduced him to a global audience. More importantly, it established his screen identity as someone who embodied realism rather than theatrical performance, shaping the trajectory of his career. Rising fame and the cost of constant motion following his breakout, Jason quickly became associated with a new type of action character, grounded, physical, and direct. His roles emphasized practicality over fantasy, and he performed many of his own stunts, reinforcing his reputation for authenticity. As his career accelerated, he moved between major action films that increasingly demanded physical endurance. Alongside professional success came personal strain, particularly in maintaining relationships while constantly working across international productions. His lifestyle became defined by long filming schedules, physical strain, and limited personal time. While his public image grew stronger, his private life became more difficult to maintain. Relationships struggled under distance and absence, and emotional connections often fractured under the weight of his career focus. This period demonstrated the cost of sustained momentum in the entertainment industry, where success often requires trade-offs that are not immediately visible from the outside. Action stardom and the body under pressure. As Jason's reputation in action cinema solidified, his roles became increasingly physically demanding. He became known for performing his own stunts, which added authenticity but also increased physical risk. Over time, repeated strain accumulated into injuries affecting his muscles, joints, and spine. Film sets that required high-impact sequences placed continuous stress on his body. Despite this, he maintained a professional approach, rarely stepping back from demanding scenes. His commitment reinforced his reputation, but also highlighted the physical cost of realism in action filmmaking. While audiences saw controlled intensity on screen, behind the scenes, the process involved recovery, pain management, and constant physical maintenance. This phase of his career defined him not only as an actor, but as a performer willing to push physical limits consistently, shaping both his legacy and his long-term health. The Black Sea incident and a moment of survival during the production of a major action film sequence filmed near the Black Sea. Jason was involved in a serious stunt accident when a vehicle he was operating failed to stop and went into the water. The situation escalated quickly as the vehicle submerged, trapping him underwater in heavy gear. Visibility was near zero, and the weight of equipment made movement extremely difficult. Survival depended on immediate response under extreme pressure. Drawing on his diving background, he remained composed long enough to navigate the situation and escape before the vehicle sank fully. The incident highlighted the unpredictable risks involved in practical stunt work and reinforced the importance of physical training in crisis conditions. While the event could have ended differently, his ability to remain calm under extreme stress became a defining example of how his early diving experience continued to influence his survival instincts, endurance, identity, and the making of a screen icon. Jason's career ultimately became a blend of physical discipline, lived experience, and controlled intensity. What began as survival on the streets evolved into athletic training, then modeling, and finally global cinema. Each stage built on the previous one, creating a layered identity shaped by adaptation rather than design. His performances resonated because they carried traces of real experience rather than pure fiction. Over time, he became associated with reliability in action cinema, consistently delivering roles defined by precision and physicality. Despite fame, his foundation remained rooted in discipline and practicality rather than celebrity culture. His journey reflects how unconventional beginnings can shape unexpected outcomes when combined with persistence and adaptability. In the end, his story is less about sudden transformation and more about continuous evolution, where every stage of life contributed directly to the person he eventually became.